this is the status of the market here. And as I was saying, we essentially had a, through 1991 up until, really 2009, there was a steady 5% increase more or less coming in. And then we had this big drop in 2009. And that's really because of the, like I told you guys, with subprime lending, no income, no asset verification, which was called the NINA loan. And you could pretty much just put down on a piece of paper what you wanted to, or what you made, and there was no verification. So as you can tell, that didn't go very well. At the time, there was also a big mortgage lender called Countrywide, for those of you who remember, and they got bought out by Bank of America. And that was kind of really the start of, really pricing going down in the market. And it stayed that way for a little bit, until the mid 2010 area again. And then as you see, it kind of gradually went up, where houses were going anywhere from 5, to 7% over here. And look what happened here right when the pandemic hit. You had up into like a 20% increase. Okay. And even though it's tapered off a little bit in the 2022, I mean, there was still like a 16% increase in the Charlotte and surrounding area market alone. So, I mean, it's been a very, very healthy market. I mean, even with the exception of, of everything over here in 2009, it really just bounced back very quickly, and it's just exceeded where it was before. Now, this illustration here is just regarding the average sales price, right? So back in 2019, your average sales price was under $275. And even when the pandemic started, your average sales price was under $300,000, right? And then look at this here. It's mid 2022. Your average sales price is around $418,000. Okay, incredible jump in the last 3 years and change going in. So I mean, if you had bought a home anytime between, I'd say beginning of this year, right, going from 3 years ago, I mean, your home appreciated. In fact, here's just a kind of a grid of the average sales price going in our entire MLS. You can just kind of see here another illustration how it just went year by year. And even here in 2022, and I told you here, at one point it even hit up into, almost 440 or so. And that's kind of tapered back down to that 418. This over here is an illustration. Okay, this is from Fairway Mortgage over here on the right here, this real estate report card. This illustrates on how the forecast is going to be over the next 5 years. So right now they're saying here that the average median home price is $418,000. And even on the next 5-year gain, they're still forecasting an increase of $83,000. Now, imagine if you're buying a home for $418,000 and you put down what, 5%? So, and we'll just round it for today's conversation, $20,000. So you put down $20,000 out of your pocket and you're going to make $83,000. That's a $63,000 return over the next 5 years by only putting down $20,000 on the home. Great investment. All right, this slide here is regarding existing home inventory. So I thought this slide was important to show for you guys because this just demonstrated that, we had a peak of homes here of 4 million homes for sale, right? And it's funny because that's kind of when the market crashed around 2010 or so, right, with the housing market. And so you can see here that we had 4 million homes available. And so everyone's just like, well, it's the buyer's market right now, right? Now's not a good time to sell. But look at this. On this grid here, we still have, okay, only 1.25 million homes available. This is nationwide, by the way, not in Charlotte. This is nationwide. And I want to remind you guys something. Anyone want to take a guess on how many people have moved into the US since 2000 to 2020? What the population growth has been? 30 million. Okay, so we have 30 million more people that live here in the US that are buying homes, right? But yet we're still at an all-time low of 1.25 million for inventory here. So, I mean, obviously still a great time to sell your home because there's still a shortage of inventory, right? And I think the misconception is the pricing on it, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. In fact, this just illustrates here the homes for sale in our MLS, right? We started off right before the pandemic in the mid 30,000 range. This is at one given time in the MLS, right? And it just kind of had this shortage of inventory just kind of plopped down, right into 2022. And then as interest rates started to rise again, there was an increase. But I mean, look, it's not like we have a ton of new homes coming up on the market here. It's still showing, right under, 20,000, I don't know, 17,000 homes for sale right here. And this data here that I'm getting is right from the Canopy Realtor Association. So this is, this is good data, guys. This is the month supply of homes for sale, which means essentially that if no new listings came available for sale, how long would it take for the actual inventory to run out in the MLS and we would run down to zero? Well, before the pandemic, it was almost 6 months supply of inventory, right? And they say to have a healthy market, you want to have about a 3-month supply of inventory, right? I mean, look at this though. Since the pandemic, it has just dwindled down to nothing. For those of you who don't know, Charlotte was back in 2020 and 2021, in the top 2 fastest growing cities in the US. I think it's cooled off a little bit now. We're in the top 5 or 6, but we had 365 people a day moving to the Charlotte market. Okay, many of them buying homes, and everything. And plus, with home prices appreciating, you had people that had their first home here in Charlotte, and they were selling their home and upgrading their home, right, to a bigger home. And so that month supply just really stayed low. Look at this here. We got all the way down to just, a 2-month supply, and it's slowly creeping its way back up, but we're not even at 3 months yet. So it's still a seller's market as far as I'm concerned, based on the data. And another one here to go over with is just the number of new listings coming in the MLS. This just shows the number of new listings coming in. Look, back in 2019, it was 94,000, and then it dropped down below 90,000. And then we had this big increase up here. And I think the reason's obvious on that is people figured out that home prices were increasing 15 to 20% a year. So if you wanted to sell your home, this was really the peak time to do it, was over the last 12 months or so. It's really started to die down over here. And it's not because, the value has dropped down. I want to repeat, this is not the value of homes. This is just the amount of inventory that's gone down. And the reason why the amount of inventory has gone down is because interest rates have risen. And so because of that, the buyer's affordability has gone down, and, they're just not paying that top dollar at the moment anymore. But, there's still buyers out there. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. And one of the last slides in the MLS here is just showing your average days on market, right? How long does it take to get your home under contract? Pre-pandemic, you were looking anywhere from 50 to 60 days. And then during the pandemic, and even up into today, look, it's dropped down to, right around 33 days or so. And remember, this is an average of the entire MLS, okay? And I can tell you personally that, when I ran this data, I just ran it for everything in the MLS, just so I wouldn't withhold any information. But I can tell you the general amount of listings that our office took in, they were selling, and I think somebody just joined. Hold on. Okay. Based off of our office, homes were selling in pretty much 3 or 4 days, at one point earlier this year and last year. It's kind of leveled off a little bit now, and homes are taking typically about 30 days or so to go under contract now at this point. Okay, mortgage rates and recessions. Guys, I just want to show you this here. This is an awesome illustration here of what the mortgage rates have looked like since 1972 to 2022. So this is a 50-year spread on mortgage rates, okay? And these dark grids here show the recession, okay? So you can see here that we started at 7.5% in 72, and we went all the way up into almost 20%, like 18% and change, okay, in 1982. And then we had a recession. So the mortgage rates went down, and then it kind of stayed a little bit and it went down. Then we had another recession and it went down. And you can see that mortgage rates historically have just been kind of going down, right, throughout the years. And then we hit this pandemic where they just hit this all-time low to where people were locking interest rates for under 3%. It was practically free money, at that point in time. And even right now, interest rates, I think I just checked with my lender yesterday, interest rates are around 6.3% right now for conventional. And there's a forecast that they're going to go back down to 5%. And we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. So that segues us into inflation and the recession. So what is going on with inflation and what's going on with the recession? I want to bring up Barry Habib just for a minute here. I got a lot of my data from Barry. Barry just hosted a webinar for licensed real estate agents and mortgage brokers. And the reason why I have his picture up here, if you look, he's got 3 crystal balls. He won the Crystal Ball Award 3 times, which means he perfectly predicted, not just predicted, but perfectly predicted the market 3 times in a row in the last 5 years. Okay. In fact, he was asked to assist Congress during the pandemic and played a major role with Congress on setting interest rates and working them through the pandemic. And he's world renowned. He's a mortgage industry expert. So a lot of the data about the recession here that I'm going to share in interest rates is based off of Barry's predictions. And he had a lot of data to back that up as well. So first off, for those of you who don't know, what is inflation? Inflation is simple. It's too many dollars chasing too few goods. Best example I can give you guys, since we all lived through the pandemic, was toilet paper, right? What happened with the toilet paper, right? We ran out of toilet paper, right? And just there's a fun fact for you. The reason why we ran out of toilet paper wasn't because of the toilet paper itself. The reason why we ran out of toilet paper sales is because the ink that was used to print on the packaging, they ran out of the ink, okay? There was a shortage of the ink, and so they couldn't produce the packaging for the toilet paper. And so that's why we ran out of it. So this is a perfect example. So what happened to the price of toilet paper? Shot up through the roof. I know at one point I couldn't find any, and I went online to eBay and bought a box of toilet paper that was normally like, $7, $8. I paid $22 for the box one time, because I couldn't find any in my local store for the first couple of weeks this went on. And then I got smart. And then I kind of went out every couple of days and bought, my supplies, and it all worked out. But, ultimately there was a price increase on everything, right? And that's kind of what inflation is, right? Too many dollars chasing too few goods. Now, if we're talking about that in the housing market, and we'll talk about Charlotte specifically on there, think about that there. If we're talking about the average sales price between $300,000 and $500,000, you've got 365 people moving here a day. Okay, you have several bank executives moving here and they've got money to put down. You've got all of a sudden like massive price hikes coming in, right? So where people were pretty much paying whatever kind of price tag you put on your home. Homes were going into multiple offers and they were paying anywhere. I even saw homes selling for $100,000 over the asking price a couple of times. So it was pretty crazy. And that's what inflation does to a market. Now, a lot of people say that that mortgage rates are driven by the feds. That is an incorrect statement. In fact, mortgage rates are driven by inflation. I want to show you this diagram here. The blue line here represents the 30-year fixed mortgage rate throughout the years. The red line here is the core consumer price index, kind of like the inflation line, right? So you can see here realistically that when the inflation went up, mortgage rates went up. When inflation went down, mortgage rates went down, right? Up and then down here. And here's the part here I want to bring up. Did you see what happened here? Inflation went way up here during the pandemic, but what happened here? Mortgage rates were the same, right? And that's because the feds kept it at this level here in order to stimulate housing. And so what they should have done to really correct this problem that we're having now is they should have started raising the rate a little bit earlier here. But if you look, they didn't really start catching up into over here into 2022, which is why we're in the problem that we're in right now. And so as a result, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate went way over inflation because the only way the government knows how to compensate for inflation is to raise the rates, right? That's how they kind of compensate for it here. And so what they had to do here is they had to overcompensate the rates, right, to adjust to the inflation, right? Now, I know that they're working on, I don't have any reports in front of me right now, but I do know that inflation is starting to level off, okay? And as a result, you will see mortgage rates drop as well. In fact, if we go back to our guy, Barry Habib, he's estimated that going into Q1 or the beginning of Q2, you're going to see mortgage rates back down to 5% again, which is really going to stir the economy for house buying. So for all you sellers out there thinking about putting your home on the market next spring, I believe we're going to have an ample amount of buyers to kind of walk you through it. Housing stays strong through the recession. Again, this is from the National House Pricing Index here. This just shows that each time that we've had a recession, the housing market has stayed strong all the way through, except for this one dip here. And we talked about why that was, right, guys? Because of the subprime lending and all just the just poor lending tools that were out there for consumers who really shouldn't have got a mortgage that got a mortgage. Okay, and then when the recession happened, they couldn't afford the mortgage, right? And so that's why you had this big, huge, influx of foreclosures happening in the 2010 eras, right? But for the most part, housing does stay strong through the recession. One thing I want to talk about is the housing bubble. Now, does anybody know who this is? This is Diana Olick from CNBC, okay? She is an Emmy Award journalist that has pretty much been covering the housing market for the last, I'm going to say 6-7 years, okay? Every year, she predicts that the housing market is a bubble. I'm sure you guys have all heard that the last 7 years. We're in a bubble, we're in a bubble, we're in a bubble. Here's her predictions. Check this out. So in the last couple of years, like in 2015, she said, housing today, a bubble larger than 2006. Well, if you listened to her and didn't buy a home, and by the way, we're going by an average sales price of $300,000. If you bought your home for $300,000 in 2015, if you didn't listen to her and did so, you made $15,000. There was a 5% appreciation across the country. 2016, she said the same thing. We're in a new housing bubble, right? Look, here we go again, 5.4%. November 2017, home ownership doesn't build wealth, study finds. Well, I mean, if you bought in 2015 and you still didn't listen to her study, look, you're already up $53,000. So I don't know how that doesn't build wealth, right? And so this really just kind of goes on. And I saved the next slide because these are very small gains, right? But check out what happened during the pandemic as she still was saying, don't buy a house during the pandemic. 16% gain. Next year will be hard on the housing market, especially in these big cities. And guys, she had Charlotte listed as one of those cities as well too. 16% gain. So my original investment of $300,000 is now worth $443,000. And then finally, housing boom is over as new home sales fall to a pandemic low, right? And the reason why the new home sales fell low, she was right about that, right? But the reason why the new sales fell low is because new construction could not keep up with the demand, right? And what happened back in 2010 is the new construction, they were building so many homes that when the recession came, there was an over surplus of new construction. So the builders have gotten a lot smarter 10 years later, and they're just building as really just underbuilding at this point to fill that demand. So if you really look at the original investment here, $300,000 investment for 2015. If you didn't listen to Diana Oleg the entire way through, you made $223,000 on your investment. Okay, huge increase on there. So the point of these slides is don't believe the media. You have to take a look at the data. All of this data has been aggregated by top industry experts. I'm just passing this along to you guys. I spent about 4 or 5 hours putting this presentation together so you guys could really get an idea as to what's going on with the market. And then the other big thing was the foreclosure rate has doubled. The foreclosure rate has doubled. I mean, that's correct. The foreclosure rate has doubled, but look where we were before. Okay, and I was around during this time, but I told you guys, look at this. In 2010, 1.6 million foreclosures nationwide. Okay, and then it went all the way down to 65,000 total across the country, right? And that's because there was so much equity built into homes that foreclosures didn't make sense anymore. So as we're going into 2022, yes, they've doubled, but look, I mean, it is still at the second all-time low that it is ever, 164,000. It's just really nothing to even really kind of worry about. So next question, or next slides here is just going to talk about so how do we market your property and navigate kind of through these times, right? So if somebody were to say to me, John, we're thinking about putting our property on the market after the holidays here into either January, February, what does that look like? And how are you going to take care of this and make this happen for us, right? Well, I'm going to kind of take this, through both different sides. I'm going to take it as if we're going to put your home on the market. And I'm also going to relate to the buyer side too, because I know many of you that are going to sell your home are going to have to buy a home as well. So we're going to go through both of them right now. First off, I want to talk to you guys about Zillow really quick. I have been with Zillow since 2010. I was one of the early adopters. For those of you who were on at the early part of the conversation, you knew I was a franchise owner of Century 21. But what really got my start in the real estate business and what got me out of the foreclosure business, that's where I got my start, was in the foreclosure business, was joining Zillow's network in 2010. And at one point in time, I think I was like one of their #1 agents, I think, on the East Coast when they first kind of came to power in the early 2010s. Okay, I've been a partner with them now for 12 years solid. And I'm now part of this Flex program to where the consumers are coming into this program and they're directly connecting them with my team. And that's important to know because there's only about, I'd say 5 or 6 teams in the entire city of Charlotte who are part of this program here. And as most of you know right now, if you're going to start your home shopping process, where are you going to go? And 99% of you are going to start on Zillow.com and start there, right? And I bring this up to you guys because anyone else you talk to that's going to market your home, it's important to know that I can tell you each month, just from Zillow alone, we're getting anywhere from 100 to 150 live callers that are coming in. And what you're seeing here is my team, okay? And what is going on is my team is working with all the buyers coming in, and my team checks all of our listings first, okay? And we do a lot of previews with our listings, and we make an effort to really kind of push our listings first since it's in our inventory, right? So we get 111 connections a month from Zillow. That's over 1,200 buyers a year that are calling our office. And that's just from Zillow. In fact, this is another report here I wanted to show you guys here that just last month, I had 260 buyers come in because Zillow is not the only place where I'm getting my lead sources from, right? I do a lot of marketing on a lot of different websites here. So we have 260 buyers a month, even during the recession here, that are raising their hand. And I can tell you this, it's different if a buyer came in 6 months ago and was looking at a property, and then I call them today and say, are you looking for a property? They're probably going to say, no, I cooled off because I'm waiting for mortgage rates to drop, right? But I can guarantee you these 260 people that came in right now, I'd say at least half of them are in the mindset of buying now, right? You don't just go to Zillow and make an inquiry in the middle of like mortgage rates hikes because you're bored. I mean, some people do, right? I know there's some people out there who do that, but the majority of people coming in are seriously considering buying a home. And that's our job here, is to navigate through that. And so we have the buyers that are coming in, even with the high interest rates that are coming in, right? This also too is a great little plan here. This is called there's actually a 2-1 buy down, but they actually have a 3-2-1 buy down now. And for those of you who don't know what this is, and I'm going to use the interest rate of, we're just making an easy number of 6.5% for today's conversation. The average interest rate was 6.5%. There's a special program right now that for 2% of the purchase price. So if we have a sales price of $500,000, if we wanted to be the seller and incentivize the buyer, we can market your property to say, we'll pay 2% of your closing costs for a buy down. And look at this here. This is for the first year, it is a 2% rate cheaper than what you're seeing right now. So you put down this $10,000 on behalf of that buyer, and we can build it into the price, right? That 6.5 interest rate becomes 4.5%, okay, during this time here. And then on year 2, it's 1% cheaper. So it becomes 5.5%. And then what will happen after year 2 is it'll actually lock in, okay, to the original interest rate of 6.5%. Now, the idea behind this, I don't know if you guys have heard this expression before, is you marry the home and you date the rate, right? And the idea behind this for anyone looking to get in is they can get into a home now, okay, for a 4.5% interest rate, watch the market over the next few months. And if they see the interest rates drop to 5, like Barry Habib and several others have predicted, they can go ahead and they can refinance the home and lock into a 5% interest rate. Here's the best part about that whole thing. If it costs $10,000 to get that 2% buy down, okay, and they waited 6 months and then they refied it, they still technically have about 18 months left, right, before that works out. They'll actually get a credit. I don't know what the exact credit will be, but anything that's unused of that $10,000, I'm just going to say it's $4,000 for today's conversation, okay? They'll get a $4,000 credit back for a refi. I just talked to Trevor Higgins on what it would cost to refi my home if I wanted to take advantage of it. And my home is valued much higher than $300,000 or $400,000. He told me that it's only $3,000 to $4,000 total to refinance my home. So hypothetically, somebody could come in, get the 2-1 buy down, okay, get the good rate they want, wait for the rate to drop to a reasonable level, lock in permanently, and essentially get a credit back and do the refi for practically free. Now, I put these flyers out of every single listing that we're doing at this point, and on top of that, we run these ads to our email database and to any agent coming in to let people know that, hey, there are these programs out here in an effort to kind of stir up the buyers to kind of go in. And this is just another thing here, just showing how the rate goes down here. Looking for buy down year 1, the rate would be 4.375. Your payment here would be $2,790. Then it goes to $3,000, and then it goes to $3,300. But the idea would be to, lock in earlier on the whole thing. And then this last illustration there for those who might be thinking about, selling their home and then renting, okay, while the rates go up, or while they're waiting for the rates to go down. I highly would recommend just doing the 2-1 buy down, waiting for it to kind of, minimize and then lock in, right? This just shows here, renting versus buying here. And this just shows you essentially in year 1, this is the rental cost versus the buying cost. It is a negative $3,000, $3,200, in favor of renting here. So if you're only going to rent for 2 years or if you're only going to buy and own the home for 2 years, it's totally worth just renting, right? But look what happens here. By year 3 to 4, it really starts to show the appreciation here. And the cash flow difference really kind of goes out. In fact, you have an appreciation gain here over 9 years of $194,000 buying versus renting. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as well, too, as I was putting this data together. All right, guys, that was pretty much it. So some of the questions, just to kind of sum up everything, I'm going to pull them up here. So, I mean, is it a good time to sell your home? I mean, I could say that right now, and I'm giving you guys my honest impression or my honest opinion. I think if somebody were to put their home on the market today, like right now, I don't know if it's really the best idea because it's the Christmas season, right? And so to really just go ahead and put your home on the market right now and go through all that, it's possible you could sell it. I've got a couple sellers that put their home on the market because they have new construction that's wrapping up in a few weeks and it's been slow. And I don't think it has anything to do with the interest rate or the buyers. I mean, the home is zoned for Providence High School and it's under $500,000 and it's still not sold and it's not overpriced. Okay. And I think that ultimately with this, it's just the holiday season here. My recommendation for anybody would be to probably put their home on the market. I would say end of January, first part of February. We can watch the rates and see as that goes. But I'll tell you this too, if you wait to put it on until spring and the rates drop and you live in a neighborhood with a lot of high turnover, meaning where there's a lot of properties that are, coming up for sale, you'll no longer have the edge and there's a possibility that you'll be competing with other homes for sale over there, right? So one of the things to do is if you guys wanted to is just contact me. We could take a look at your neighborhood, run a history of the sales, see what your competition is and pick a strategic time to put the home on the market, right? So you could avoid any competition in the spring season. Why hasn't my neighbor's home sold yet? That's another question I have on here. The answer is simple on that. They're still trying to get the, I'll say May 2022 value for their home. And it just doesn't work anymore, right? And I had a lot of sellers over the fall, had a really hard time digesting that. And it was just a really simple fix. If a home was worth $400,000 a year ago and it sold for $500,000 in May, my recommended list price is like $570. I mean, yes, it's a 5% drop. Okay, but a 5% drop at 570 is still $70,000 more than what it was a year before that, right? And I think a lot of people had a really hard time because they really wanted to maximize that value. Do I think we'll get back up to that value? I think we'll have, I mean, I think as time shows, right, off the illustrations that I had for you guys, that we will in fact get back up to, you know, prices going up again. In fact, the forecast for next year is a 5% increase. Okay. But I think in order for that to really happen, we're going to have that interest rate drop, which according to Barry Habib and the other analysts should be sometime in the early spring or, you know, first part of first quarter there. What other questions do I have on here? I think I covered most of them on there. The other big question I get is what's my home worth right now currently? I mean, I can't answer that for everybody right now because I mean, there's 20 something people on the Zoom, actually 16 people on the Zoom call. So probably the best thing to do is I'm going to do a share screen one more time and just have my information on here. And if anybody wants to take a photo of it with my information, get to it real quick. There you go. This is all my information. I'll leave it up there for a minute. You guys can take down my phone number, take down my email address. You can send me a private message after the meeting. I'll open up the floor for questions in just a moment here, but I'll give everybody just another 10 seconds or so to write this information down if they're looking for it. Okay. Any questions for anybody? What'd you guys think?
Very good. I have a question for you, John.
Yes, Howard.
A general question, but it's really the bottom line question. How would you compare the Charlotte market to the rest of America? Are we above, equal, or below? I don't think we're below, but if we're above, how much so?
You know, I don't know how much so per exactly, but I can tell you that the market in the Carolinas always outperforms most of the U.S. in general. You know, I did it. You know, it's funny, Howard. I do have a slide on that, but I don't have it on me. It shows essentially kind of, you know, just growth and how what states last through the recessions and which ones don't. And the Carolinas during the first hit in 2010 were some of the lowest states hit, right? And I think because you have a lot of businesses still moving here and the growth rate here is still exceptionally high, there's always a demand for real estate. So to be honest with you, I don't think we're going to see prices really go any lower than what we're seeing right now. In fact, I think what's going to happen at this point is they're just going to kind of flatline for a little bit here. Then we'll just see this increase. And overall, we always perform better than the U.S. in general, especially over these last couple of years here in the Charlotte market.
Okay. And I would like to chime in on that, on something.
Yeah, please, Colin, go ahead.
Pretty important. And just so if you don't know me, my name is Colin Ramirez. I'm a listing specialist with the John Bolos Group. And to kind of piggyback for Howard off of that, an important piece to note would be, and I use the example of like driving on the highway in Charlotte for the past 2 and 3 years has been, you know, if the speed limit is 70, everyone's been going 115 miles an hour. And so now with everything that is going on and people are saying, hey, is my home value, you know, is everything dropping? Well, no, instead of going 115, everyone just slowed down to 110. And so when you take that in comparison, just, you know, on a yearly basis, you are still in a strong amount of appreciation. You just didn't hit that absolute peak that you thought was, you know, still going to continue going. You're still making that, but you're not all of a sudden dropping, you know, below. Now all of a sudden everybody's going 60 miles an hour per se. Yeah. You know, so it's still a huge amount of appreciation that will still continue through. Do I think we'll end up, you know, staying around that 110, may get up to 112 and then kind of come back down? Yes, but we're still going to end up seeing that increase, especially with the fact that there's still more people coming here from, you know, your New York, your California, surprisingly a lot from Texas and Arizona. And so, you know, that's definitely going to be a driving force in that.
Thank you, Colin. Anyone else have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've been in the business about 2.5 years now. So I started when all of this madness started. So I don't really know any other market. Do you think that if interest rates were to fall maybe 5% or around 5% in Q1, you think that's just going to start back up the whole multiple offers and craziness again?
Yeah, now I do think that we probably aren't going to have, you know, I mean, I think that the days of getting $70,000 over the asking price are probably going to be gone. I mean, it probably could still happen in a really tight neighborhood per se. I think what's just going to happen is we're going to see just a slightly more normal market with just a high demand to where you'll still probably have those multiple offers. But I just don't know if you're going to get 50, 60, 70,000 over the asking price because we've already appreciated so much at this point. And interest rates back then were like only 2 points and change, right? So you had a lot of people that were just waiving appraisals and coming in at that rate. And I really feel what's going to happen is that, you know, it's definitely going to spark up, because what's going to happen is you have people that are still moving here where schools, right? School's a big factor, right? And so that's why you have a big splurge in the spring a lot of times, because everybody wants to be in their home really by June or July, because school starts back up in August here, right? So I do feel to be a high demand. And that's the other thing too, is if you're looking to buy a home at this point in time, this is really the time to buy. 100%. If you see something out there, you should absolutely go for it at this time. I've got sellers cutting deals left and right, even selling a little bit below market value, because they've got to move on to the next chapter of their life. And, and in the springtime, when the buyer pool goes up again and the rates are down, you are going to be in those multiple offer situations again. But again, I'm just not sure if you're going to be 50, 60, 70K over the asking price.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question, John.
Yes, Andrew.
So typically in the spring, I guess traditionally it's been the best time to put a house on the market. Now inventory obviously has been low over the past year or so. It's increased a little bit. What do you think that is true, to put it on, that you should put it on in the spring? And if more people are going to put on in the spring, if the economy is good, then the prices could go down, right? Because there's going to be more supply. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things to watch the rates and see kind of what starts happening in January, right? Typically speaking, like if we didn't have this issue, I usually talk to most of my sellers about putting their property on the market end of January, first part of February is typically what I advise. All right. And that's usually a good time, because it's usually about a month shy before the season really starts, but it gives my seller an edge because there's no competition. Right. And we showed that in the slides earlier with an all-time low for inventory, that it's just a really good time to put the home on the market during that time, because you compete. So I guess, Andrew, to answer your question, if you were like in Steel Creek, for example, where there's a huge amount of inventory at all given times, if you put it on in January, you may have a better chance of getting a better price point, versus competing with several homes that could be, on that same block or within a 1 mile radius. Again, that's something that I would just really kind of dive into with who's ever interested. Because my goal isn't just necessarily just make the sale and go, right? I want to really educate the consumer, whoever decides to work with us, and let them know if it's really a good time to put the home on the market, what we're currently seeing, and what my advice is on pricing.
Right. They say put your house on the market after Super Bowl Sunday.
Right.
When people are focused.
Yeah, that's true too.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for your time today. I know we went about 10 minutes over than what I was anticipating, but I hope you guys found it very informative. Again, if anybody wants to give me a call, you can do so. Does anybody need me to put my information on the screen again, or are we all set?
We're good.
Okay. We're good. Thank you guys so much. Have a Merry Christmas to everybody. Take care, and I hope to speak to some of you soon, okay?
Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.